Hello, everyone. Before we get started on this episode, I wanted to make a few comments about some news that came out. Grant Morrison came out as non binary. They use they, them pronouns now. We are so excited on Gotham Outsiders to be learning more about Grant Morrison, how they understand themselves and the world, and to welcome them publicly into the queer community. We also want to comment on the fact that we've talked about Grant Morrison a couple of different times on this show before this news came out. In those past episodes, we used the pronouns that they were using publicly at the time, which are no longer the pronouns that they are using publicly. They have begun to use their true pronouns publicly. So when you go back and if you hear our past episodes, you will hear that we will be using the correct pronouns going forward. But we wanted to make sure that our listeners knew if you missed the news, and also that anyone who is going back through our back catalog understands where this kind of fits in the timeline of that story. It is an amazing article, which we have linked to on our Twitter, and I hope that you go and read it. With this news, we are also going to revisit Grant Morrison, which was something we hadn't planned on doing as we covered two of their volumes before. But with this new understanding of their identity and sort of their public coming out to the world, we want to do a special episode sort of talking about their writing with that in mind. We are bringing back our past guests, Ben Kahn and Alicia Whitley, who talked about Grant Morrison with us for a special episode coming up in the future. So keep an eye out for that, and more details about that will come. If you ever hear this, Grant Morrison, we are so excited for you. The piece was beautiful, the interview was beautiful, and we're happy to have you as part of the family. Thank you, everyone, for your patience as we fix this part of our podcast. We want to make sure that we're always doing the most respectful and true things for the people we talk about, and definitely not having had that information before. We are aware that there were some limits in the things we said, including some of our conversations around Grant Morrison and gender overall, which, in looking back, we maybe see a little differently knowing more about their actual life story. So I hope that you will join us for that special episode and keep that in mind going forward. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to Gotham Outsiders, a Batman book club. Seeing bats in all my inkblot tests, I'm your host, Chris. And with me, unable to make a decision without flipping a coin, my co-host, TJ.
So accurate. Hi, everyone. I'm TJ, your Batman acolyte.
And I am your Batman obsessive, if the inkblot test didn't give it away. But today we sent up a bat signal to bring in someone else to help us out because we couldn't do it alone, unlike Batman, who also never works alone. So today, with us, we have Parsec Award-winning podcast host, writer, and stay-at-home dad, Christopher Morse.
Hi, everybody.
Hi,
Thanks for having me.
Christopher.
Hi.
Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
So tell me, how do you guys know one another?
I actually looked it up because I was thinking.
I'm so glad.
Yes. Well, okay, so I started following Chris on Twitter, and I don't know why. I'm assuming it was a retweet of a retweet. You see something, you're like, this person seems interesting, and I will follow her. So I followed her first.
Yes.
And then it was literally, okay, so I'm weird, and I actually looked, and it was July of last year, of
I love
2019.
that.
That you made some sort of tweet about Power Rangers because your nephew was asking about Power Rangers. And I replied, you wanted to know what the darkest Power Rangers series was.
Oh, that's right.
I responded with my opinion that RPM is the darkest of the Power Rangers shows. And then we spent, I want to say, upwards of hours just exchanging Power Ranger gifs on Twitter.
I had forgotten this, but it's all coming back to me, and I'm so glad you looked this up because we always asked our guests this, and my brain was like, why do we know each other?
Chris has so many meet cutes on Twitter. It's ridiculous.
I know. And yeah, it was fun because I was actually getting to interact with someone with a bit of knowledge that I gained being a stay-at-home dad.
I love it.
Because my son watches it nonstop.
Yes, and I was using my knowledge of having babysit quite a lot.
And Christopher, I just listened to a segment of one of your podcasts, something about a supervillain. Can you tell us more about that one? And I hear you have a Joker laugh you want to show off for us.
Oh God. Okay. Well, so 8 years ago, wow, I started a podcast called Supervillain Corner. It is an advice show for the up and coming supervillain. And really, it was purely a way to just do some writing and get it out there. I went to school for theater, and the problem with theater is that you constantly have to ask other people permission to do art. It's very hard without funding to just go and do it yourself. Whereas podcasting suddenly came into my life, and I realized I can do this pretty much for free. So, and I have a very bad Mark Hamill Joker impression, and
Please.
I parlayed that into Supervillain Corner, and it's mostly me and some other very lovely voice actor people who I've met, generally through Twitter, or I went to Balticon for several years, which is a science fiction convention in Baltimore. And it's supervillains talking about giving advice of, like, you know, should you have all of your minions wear masks that disguise their identities that makes it easier for the heroes to infiltrate your base? Probably not. And silly stuff like that. But yeah, I do have a Joker laugh. I had to get into it though, so hold on. Breath, hold on.
This is so exciting. It was so good.
That is the goal when you're doing a Joker laugh. The creepier, the better.
It sounded pretty dang good, though.
Well, thank you very much.
Amazing. Oh, wow. Well, Christopher, you may know from being so kind as to listen to our podcast that
I have.
You have indeed, that we have an ongoing trivia battle, and it's TJ versus our guests.
Yes.
And I've yet to win somehow.
Somehow, despite the fact that we had a guest who's never read a single Batman other than the one we made them read.
Wow.
It's shocking. So the way this is going to work, considering we already know you know way more than TJ about this, I'm going to let TJ have a chance, and when he doesn't get it, you can steal.
Okay.
Sorry, TJ.
I got this. I can do it.
You can do it. I believe in you.
Well, in this volume that we read, there's a lot of random cameos.
Mm-hmm.
So, TJ,
Mm-hmm.
who is Azrael?
He was some vigilante that got beat up.
I didn't ask who he was in this.
You just want in general?
Yeah, do you know anything about Azrael?
I don't.
Oh.
Okay.
That pitiful aw.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Go ahead, Christopher.
Azrael was Batman. Azrael was Batman when Bane broke Bruce Wayne's back and he had to come up with a replacement. Did he give the job to Dick Grayson? No. Did he ask Superman to stand in for him? No. He got a crazy religious fanatic with blades and a weird robotic costume to be Batman.
As you do.
As you do.
It's not like he spent his life training literal replacements at any point.
Yeah.
I had no idea that's where this was going.
Yep. It's that was an interesting time. I think that was the same time in comics that Peter Parker was a clone. So it was a really weird, like, all of your heroes are not your heroes anymore sort of time to read comics. Not that I was reading comics at the time, but looking back, I'm like, that's just a weird time.
Honestly, has Batman been Batman as frequently as other people have been Batman? I need somebody to do the research on this.
I could tell there was some background or history with that character in this book, but he was so not entirely relevant that I just kind of brushed over his whole thing.
With the new 52, that might not even be true anymore, what we just said.
Who knows?
Yeah, I don't even know if that's actually the case.
This is Rebirth, so, even New 52 is...
Double reboot.
All the reboots have happened. Who knows who Azrael is, to be honest.
Not me, that's for sure.
Your answer was correct, though. I think TJ should get a point for that because he was correct. He's a vigilante who got his butt kicked in the beginning of the book that we're going to read.
I like this Christopher guy, Chris.
He's nicer to you than I am.
I know. Do you want to be on every episode?
Yes, I do. My wife will kill me, but I do.
All right, Chris, and what's my next question?
Who is Leslie Tompkins?
I actually have this written down because when she popped up on the page, I recognized her from the Gotham TV show. She was
Nice.
played by Inara from Firefly.
Yes.
So she is a doctor that from what I can tell in this volume, she helps vigilantes like recover after attacks.
Yeah.
And I know she dated Jim Gordon in the show, but I don't know how accurate that is to the comic books.
I don't think that ever happens in a comic book. I could be wrong. There's a lot of comics.
I just
Okay.
stared off into the distance and was like, did that happen? It could have.
It could have. It very well could have. I don't think so.
I feel like Jim Gordon never gets to date anyone in the comics.
So did I win a question?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my
I
gosh.
think you
Sorry,
got
I'm
it.
taking over. You tell him if you got a point, Chris. I'm sorry.
Christopher is like, you can have all the points, TJ.
Christopher is like, I'm the new Chris around here. I'm you, but better.
New Chris, better than the old Chris. No,
Chris 2.0.
there we go.
Which still implies you're better though.
I'm just the update. The update is always better.
That's what I'm saying.
There are a lot of bugs in this patch.
Did you have anything to add to who Leslie is?
Lesbian Tompkins. I mean, she could be a lesbian.
She could be, for all we know. Do you have anything to add, Christopher?
My knowledge of the character, I didn't watch Gotham. I think I watched like the first half a season. But Leslie Tompkins, I only knew her from Batman the Animated Series because they brought her in a couple episodes where she would take care of Batman or Robin, whoever was injured. And I loved those peripheral characters. I remember they also brought in like he had a mechanic who didn't know who Batman was, but he was like, this is Batman's mechanic. And I loved that. I just loved that there were these people that worked with Batman, didn't necessarily know he was Bruce Wayne, but like, these are the people he goes to.
Yes, and this is pretty much how she always shows up in the comics. She gets like basically kidnapped to come help them.
Yeah.
Nobody listens to her and she's always annoyed. Those are her two personality traits.
But she always helps.
But she helps. She has a good heart, but she would really like it if they would stop doing these things.
So she's like the night nurse from Daredevil.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
But she's a doctor, unlike in Daredevil. So it makes more sense that she's treating them.
All right. Another who is it question for you all. This character is only mentioned, much to my annoyance. Who is Harper Row?
I know this one.
Yeah.
Yay!
I actually have this written in my little notepad too from when I was reading. Harper Row she's like a low income teenager in Gotham, and I want to say Batman saved her once or she ran into him and she started dressing up and trying to help him occasionally. I can't remember where I read that, Chris. It might have been in either Batman Eternal or something in the Scott Snyder run.
She's in both, but I think you probably read that in Batman Eternal.
Okay, so did I miss anything?
Do you know her name? Her
Is
code
she
name?
Bluebird or Blue Jay or something like that?
Christopher, do you want to steal?
Bluebird, I believe. Am I right?
Hey.
Yeah, Bluebird is correct. Yeah. I just started reading Batman Eternal after listening to your first episode.
Yes!
And so I just got introduced to Harper Row, who I did not know existed. So you might have won that had I not listened to your first episode.
Ooh.
Oh no, we gave it away.
Yeah, my only other exposure to her is on Young Justice, and apparently it wasn't super good representation.
Oh yeah, and she just had like a cameo. Like she wasn't at her super self, I don't think.
Right.
Yeah.
She was there to establish that another character was queer, and they like made out briefly, but that was it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I
she
remember
is
that now.
canon queer in the
Yes.
comics. Yes. All right, the final one. This is kind of tangentially related to this one, but it reminded me of it. Is what is Batman Incorporated?
It is that thing that happened right after Grant Morrison's Batman and Robin arc.
That's true, but that's not what it is.
I'm assuming it's some sort of detective agency because it has the word incorporated in it, much like Mystery Inc. Incorporated.
That is really cute. It's not right, but it's very cute.
It is.
Christopher, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Yeah, Batman Incorporated was an organization formed by Bruce Wayne who went public as the money behind the Batman, and which I don't know why they didn't let other people figure out that he was Batman. But anyway,
Right.
he established like these Batman Incorporated organizations around the world, and like every country had a Batman.
You know, I think you all tied this time.
We worked together and we won. I feel like.
Okay, you both win.
Yay!
Which is
Yay!
the definition of a tie, but okay.
We'll share the trophy.
Yes.
All right, Chris. So what book are we reading today or talking about today?
Today we have read, quite literally for TJ and I, who both read it today,
Ooh.
Batman Detective Comics Volume 1, Rise of the Batman by, all right, say the name for me.
James Tynion IV?
James Tynion IV. And then he has been promoted to one of the head Batman writers now.
Yeah.
I am intrigued to check that out.
Yeah, he's working on the current Batman title. So
yeah,
he took over after Tom King.
Yes.
Yes.
So, do you want to take us into the story, TJ?
I am ready to get into the meat of this story with no Professor Pig this time. All right, here we go. All right, so I have to start off, and I might do this every time, but I love the art in this.
Yes.
And like, there's so many different art styles, but they all work together and feel completely competent. I don't know how they did it.
The layout choices, I feel like, are phenomenal. I mean, we'll talk about more later, but like there's a scene where it's a I'm jumping way ahead, but it's a flashback in a glass of beer.
Yes.
And it just blew me away, just that choice, and it works metaphorically and it works on the page, and it's clear and crisp and beautiful. And yeah, I could talk forever about this art. I love the style.
Yeah, that's one I had written down to talk about. And there's one where it's like a computer screen with different panels into the screen. And like occasionally there's one that is literally a panel for the page. And it was so good.
Yes, the art is absolutely stunning. There's one scene where Steph and Tim are talking, and it just pans into her face, and it's this beautiful portrait of her that's the most like fully realized drawn Steph I've ever seen.
So you just mentioned Steph, so I'm gonna just cut right to it. How do we feel about her relationship with Tim, and do we like it?
In this, I love it. And in many of the others, I also love it. And occasionally some writers do it and I don't love it.
Okay.
I really do. I love their relationship in this a lot. And the other one that I always think of is the Batman War Games, where I think their relationship is really sweet. They're complicated. Everything Tim Drake is retconned at some point, so...
Yes, this is... Tim... Oh, God, poor Tim.
Christopher, do you want to tell the audience what you learned this week?
I learned, so this is hilarious. I learned this before I learned it on the first episode of your podcast. So I was just looking up Tim Drake because I was reading this in preparation for this podcast. And so I wanted to be as on top of Tim Drake as I possibly could. Well, that was awkward.
I would love that as well.
He's a teenager.
Adult Batman Beyond Tim Drake. That's who we
There we go. That's what we mean, obviously. So I looked it up and I was like, I know when they did the New 52, they changed the timeline. So everything happened within like 5 years, which is dumb, but whatever. They did it. And so I'm like, well, how do you fit 4 Robins in there? You know? And
One a year.
Guess what? One a year, I guess. But guess what? They didn't. They decided that Tim Drake was never Robin. He just became Red Robin. What?
Why? How? No one knows.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you guys about, there's a scene between Bruce and Tim on a rooftop, and he's like, so Tim, you weren't really Robin, but you were to me. And I was like, what? Like,
Yeah.
Can you
That's what
guys
got me Googling.
clarify?
No, that's
Okay,
what got me Googling.
gotcha.
Because, so his original history, and I'm sure you've talked about it before, but his original
Yes.
history was Jason Todd died. Batman didn't have a Robin. And
Yes.
he was hyper violent. He wasn't stable anymore. And Tim Drake was like, well, Batman needs a Robin. And because Tim Drake is super duper smart, he figured out that Bruce Wayne was Batman.
Right.
And he basically went to him. I think he first went to Dick and said, Dick, you got to be Robin again. And Dick was like, screw that.
Yes.
I'm with an alien princess. I don't need this.
Accurate.
And then Tim was like, well, fine, I'll be Robin. And he sort of forced himself onto Bruce, becoming the new Robin. But apparently in the new canon, he just ended up becoming a vigilante in honor of the Robins by calling himself Red Robin, and he had wings. Like, not actual wings, but he had a feathered cape instead of a real cape.
Which they make fun of in this, and I
Yes.
did like it.
Yes, and it wasn't good, but it was different at least. Whereas this one in this costume just looks like a Robin costume with an extra R pasted on.
Yeah, can we talk about how much this costume sucks?
Yeah.
Every other Tim Drake design is better than this one. I'm just throwing it out there.
He needs the hood. He needs the cowl.
He needs
The Red
the
Robin
cowl.
with the cowl. We talked about this on Twitter. Red Robin with the cowl is a sleek look, and it's a unique look.
Yes.
That makes him different from the Robins. He makes him different from Nightwing and different from Red Hood. And they took it away.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the way that they've retconned his entire backstory but still tried to keep everything about his personality the same is baffling.
Yeah.
Because the whole deal with Tim is that, as we read in the Grant Morrison one that we read, he was replaced. And it informs his character for a long time that he was kicked out of being Robin. And the fact that he still has that, like, insecurity and, like, middle child syndrome, but isn't one of the children, does not make any sense.
Yeah.
I don't know how we haven't done this yet, but every time one of you says Red Robin, I just want to go, yum.
It's true. It
Well,
is the worst of the names.
It is, but at least it's from classic comics. So
Yes, yeah.
the original Earth 2 story, so there was Earth 1 and Earth 2. And Earth 2, they aged the characters realistically. So Batman got older, and then Dick actually took on the role of Red Robin, which was his superhero identity when he got older instead of Nightwing in this alternate universe. And that's where the costume with the cowl comes from. So it existed before this. So at least they have that going for it, but still it's a restaurant chain.
It is.
I will say, out of all the Robins we've read so far, Tim is my favorite.
Yes! The excitement is so real.
Right. The competition being Damian and Dick as Batman.
Yes. Yeah, you haven't read actually either of the other two as Robins yet, so.
Oh, and we had Jason too, but he was not a hero, so I'm not counting him.
And Steph was a Robin as well.
Yeah, she was.
Let's never forget.
And she died, didn't she?
Recently, yes.
Yeah.
All the Robins have died. It's okay.
So we've talked about Steph and we talked about Tim. Let's move on to Batwoman, because my extent of her is from the TV show, and I don't know how accurate that is.
Not very. Other than that, she's a lesbian. They got that right.
So when I read Batman comics, I hear Kevin Conroy in the dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
When you read Batwoman in this, do we hear Ruby Rose?
Not at all.
Yeah, I don't think I do either.
I don't, and I don't know who I hear, because I read this and this book specifically and a couple other Batwoman books before.
Yeah.
I read, and I don't know what her voice is in my head. I'd actually have to break that down. I don't know who I hear. It's not Ruby Rose. I don't think Ruby Rose did a bad job, even though she's leaving the show now. Yeah. But I don't know whose voice I hear. It's weird.
Yeah, I don't think she's a bad. I don't think she did bad at what she was given, and I actually do enjoy that show. I just don't think it actually is Batwoman from the comics.
Yeah, that's true.
Fair. Yeah, like when I read the Batwoman dialogue, like I do have a voice in my head. It's not Ruby Rose. It's a bit gruffer. Couldn't tell you who it is, though.
I agree.
She is the drill sergeant, and that's the role she plays in this. But like that, I think is the perfect sort of role for her, and I think that encompasses Batwoman a lot in her character as total, not just living in this book, and that what makes her different from Batgirl and different from Batman and the Robins and all of them.
Yeah, absolutely. She
I
always
love
feels a little bit apart, even though she's, in the team in this one. There's something about her that always feels separate from the Bat family, even though she's actually biologically related to actual
Yes.
Batman.
right. And I think in this one specifically, she's Batman's partner, but they're not exactly partners until the
Yeah.
end. And she's
Right.
not on the same level as the quote children because, she's the boss. So she's kind of in that weird middle space.
Yeah, and he does this a lot. So Batman, despite people's belief that he works alone, which he has never done, not even once, he is a very good delegator. He's constantly forming teams. I mean, we talked about Batman Incorporated, which is what this made me think of because I was like, this is one of the teams from that, it feels like. But he also did the Outsiders recently, where he gave a team to Black Lightning. Like, he's constantly just like, let me collect children and give them to one of my friends to raise.
Yeah, that's Young Justice. I mean, at least the cartoon. If
Oh,
not,
you're right.
that's the Justice League. Is Batman saying, "Okay, we have a team now"? Like it's
Yeah, pretty
he's
much.
he's the grown up of that group, really.
100% of the time, which is
Yeah,
scary. Which is
yeah.
scary.
He
Really,
shouldn't be, but he is.
he should never be. Alfred should be the adult.
Yes.
I do like how Kate, what she brings to the dynamic between them. I feel like she puts him in his place, and
Yes.
I don't know. I just reading Batman by himself gets a little boring for me, but
Yes.
him with a partner, I like that.
Yeah, that you
And
won't ever read him by himself, so you're fine.
yeah, and Kate is great because she didn't ask him permission to be Batwoman. She's not connected to him in her
Yes.
origin, even though they're related by blood. And so then she earned his respect just through going out and doing the job. So thematically, she's matches with them, but she's not one of his. And he
Yes.
respects her almost more because of that. He doesn't have any of the baggage he has with Tim or any of the Robins.
Which comes up a lot in this one.
Yes.
Goodness.
Oh God, the baggage.
The baggage.
I feel like this plot line would have been fantastic on the Batwoman TV show.
Yes.
Yeah, I would love to see a live action Tim Drake. I'm so sad that that has not happened yet.
I guess they could still do it on her show, but now that Kate, the character, is gone, I feel like that just changes the story so much.
Yeah. They could do it on Titans, I suppose. They could give us a Tim Drake, but it's not going to be with Batwoman.
Yes.
So the next character, we have Orphan.
Yes.
Cass.
Yeah, Cassandra Cain. Very different from the version of her in the Birds of Prey movie.
Yes.
That is completely an original version of her. Like, she is not like that in any of the comics.
No.
I
remember that being the one issue that Gail Simone said that she had with that movie. And I love Birds of Prey, by the way. But she said the one issue she had was just the naming of that character. It wasn't that the character was bad. It's just like, this is not why. Give her a new name, give her a unique name, because she's a completely unique character. She is not Cassandra Cain, not really.
Yeah, she isn't. The only pushback to that I have seen is the writer of Shadow of the Batgirl, who his name is escaping me, but she made the comment, we've had all these different TV movie versions of Batman. Why can't we have that of Cass as well? Like,
That'd be, yeah, that's fair.
So that was why I didn't mind it as much when I heard that take. I was like, you're right. We constantly keep reinterpreting him, that we expect everyone else to be completely the same all the time, which seems unfair to them, honestly.
The Cassie in this book reminds me of X-23 from the X-Men comics. I don't know if you guys...
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, and she's like, this is her. So you're getting the main cast that you're going to see in pretty much everything. Yeah, yeah.
Now, since the reboot, has Cass been... So is this Cass is Orphan. Has she been Batgirl in this version of the DC Universe? Or has she not? Because previously, she was a Batgirl.
Right. So...
Just like Steph was. I know Steph was not a Batgirl in this continuity.
No. So Cass has at various times been Batgirl, Black Bat, Orphan. Feel like I'm forgetting one. But in this continuity, which I believe is in line with the Batman Eternal continuity as well, I think she starts as Orphan.
Okay.
Could that be wrong? Possibly. The reboots lose me sometimes.
Yeah.
But I do believe she is Orphan first in this, and that is how she's introduced in Internal, is first being Orphan.
All right, and then the last character that Batman recruits is Clayface, and Clayface is nothing like the version we just read in Arkham Asylum, Chris.
No, no. To be fair, the version that Grant Morrison wrote, I did not know was Clayface until it was explicitly said. So I was like, wait, who? What? What is that?
Yeah, I had no idea until Alicia pointed it out, and I was like, what? That was Clayface?
We read that whole comic and we didn't know it was him.
Yeah, this version in this comic, I thought he was fantastic.
Yes.
I love this version. I feel like this is a different version too than usually is in the comics, because he is just a full-on himbo in this, and I love it.
Clayface is why I love this book, and it's why a friend
Yes.
of mine recommended this book to me.
Yes.
Because I obviously have a thing for supervillains, so the idea of putting a supervillain on the team is always please just put it in my veins. I want that. That's why I love Legends of
Yes.
Tomorrow on TV. It's like Captain
Yes.
Cold and Heatwave on a team of superheroes. Hell to the yes every week.
Yes.
But Clayface, so it hit me when I first read this book it's from 2016, so 4 years ago when I first read it. I so relate to the character of Clayface as he's presented here. Weirdly, as a fat person. And I say that because he's got this very melancholy, like, I'm a monster and I don't want to be a monster. And I'm not saying as a fat person I'm a monster, but I don't know if other fat people have felt this way, but I've had parts in my life where I have felt down and I have felt like I was a monster walking around, like I was disgusting and horrible looking and anyone would turn away. Not to bring the podcast down,
No,
but
it's a good point.
yeah.
I had those feelings, and so seeing those feelings reflected in a character like that really hit me hard the first time I read it, and I love that. I love just the fact that the villain or the monster with the chance for redemption is an arc I will always just grab onto and hold so tightly. And plus, it also brought us smiling Batman, which
Yes.
that scene they find him in he's scared everyone out of a movie theater so he can watch himself as he used to be performing in a film, and then Batman comes up and they make him an offer to join the team and Batman is smiling and I'm like, where is this Batman been? I want this Batman.
I love his relationship with Clayface. It's like he's like, come on buddy, you can be my friend.
No, Christopher, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because like I also have that sort of connection with the character, and not in the same way, but in the way that, you know, you feel some days you feel ugly, you feel like you're treated different because of your looks, you're not, you know what I mean? It's like standard.
It's interesting because of a complete coincidence, genuinely. I teach Psych 101 right now, and I just taught about body image.
Okay.
Right? And I read this book like the same week, and it was just kind of this interesting connection in my brain to be having these conversations with 18-year-olds who, you know, when I asked them to set goals for the semester, half of them were like to look better or to lose weight, which is why I decided to add body image into my class. It hadn't been there before. And then to read this and see how well it was done, I thought it was so smart and so well handled.
And I just love how the team just like doesn't question him being there. Right. I mean, part of that is probably they're all superheroes and they're like, if we had to, Batman would take him down. Like that's, and we have this tech that can turn his powers off. So we have nothing to be afraid of. But it's like, he's accepted. Like he asked Tim to like, hey, can I borrow this thing so I can go for an audition? I want to go on. And he's like, yeah, sure, take it.
Tim is cute. I mean, I know we don't really get much of it, but the way they interact is very cute. Tim is kind of, I you know, he's my favorite. That said, he's not great at the socializing.
No.
It's not one of his many skills. He can invent robots, but have a conversation, not so much.
No.
So was Clayface recruited because he had drones following him?
No, I believe. So yeah, the comic starts and Batman, it's like basically drones are following all these vigilantes, and so he's gathering the vigilantes. I don't think the drones are following Clayface, and I think that's why he's on the team more than anything else. It's like
I kind of read it as, you escaped Arkham already, you might as well just stay out with us. I don't have to break anybody out. I could just take you.
He's very much the Groot of the team.
Mhm.
Even when the part where he wraps them in that ball, I was like, this is from Guardians of the Galaxy.
He was so adorable. I feel like I've never read a Clayface comic and went, he was adorable before, but I was just like,
Yeah.
this sweet angel. He has a cinnamon roll.
So was Tynion the one that came up with this, like, character of Clayface? Like,
This
this
version?
version? Yeah.
I haven't seen it before. Have you, Christopher?
I not really. I think the animated series, and there's so many comics. Again, it could be anywhere, but like the animated series had a different version, but he was also an actor, Matt Hagen. Honestly, which get the name drop because Matt Hagen is the fake name that he has when he's auditioning.
Yes.
But and I think there's also like another canon Matt Hagen somewhere in the books as well that's also a Clayface, because there's a couple Clayfaces.
Yeah.
But this one, the animated series was very good about giving us villains that we could feel bad about.
Right.
And that we could emote with and empathize with. And so he was an actor, and there was an accident, or in his case, he was like the mob like forced this stuff on him that transformed him. They planned to just kill him, but it turned him into Clayface, and he just wants to be normal again. But he ends up just committing these crimes and causing, like, part of it because it makes him unstable, and then part of it is just like he's angry and aggrieved, and he becomes a supervillain. He's not like, I'm going to take over the world. He's just lashing out. And I think taking that version and just making him a little bit more himbo-y.
Yes.
And you get the Detective Comics version, which I love him so much.
I do
You
too.
like this version? He's a huge character in the Harley Quinn cartoon on HBO.
Oh God, yes.
That's right.
He's fantastic there too.
Acting.
He is so good.
That was such a good impression. It's almost like you're a voice actor or something.
Almost weird,
Almost
right?
like that. So weird.
Yeah, Alan Tudyk's interpretation of the happy-go-lucky Clayface, who takes acting far too seriously, I died when they introduced that character.
It's
so good.
We have to cover that show at some point soon.
Yes.
And the Clayface, so going off of Clayface as a character, in issue 2 it opens that Tim is using his clay to have like a danger room type.
A danger room that they call a mud room.
The mud room.
That was so funny.
Yeah, there were like hundreds of Jokers, and my first thought was, is this how the 3 Jokers happened?
My first thought was, this is my nightmare.
Right?
Yeah, Chris is not a Joker fan.
Chris would be happy if the Joker remained a specter that is talked about and rarely seen.
The Joker is best when used like the shark in the original Jaws.
I agree. As soon as he shows up on the panel, I'm like, okay, I'm done now.
Yeah. But this was fantastic. Yeah, the mudroom. I it's unclear. He's like, we use extra like leftover Clayface clay. I'm like, what's the leftover? What? Does he just like drop it everywhere? Does he throw it?
He molts. He just like sheds it sometimes.
There's a fanfic about this.
I mean, he suffers from like the Transformers thing, which is where in the Transformers comics and on the cartoon, like people would grow and shrink with like no consequence for like physics,
right?
And it making any sense. Like Megatron would turn into a gun and then land in the hand of a robot that previously he was larger than, and so it's like, what? And so like the same thing with Clayface, like he can grow and shrink, and like where's that mass coming from? Is he just hyper dense when he's just human sized, or what? Like what is the case there? It's unclear. And so it's like, where's all this extra mud coming from? I don't care enough that it ruins the comic, but it's just funny to think about.
I have a mental image of, you know how when you have a cat and there's just like the hair everywhere? I feel like Tim's just walking around like scraping Clayface dust off of things and being like, I can use this.
Come on, Tim made a Roomba.
You're right. He would never do it himself.
Not by hand.
He does say he has several giant Roombas. That is a line in this comic.
Forgot.
I think this is the same scene where Batwoman says to Clayface, imagine being able to harden parts of yourself instinctively, and I lost it.
I've totally missed that, which is unlike me.
Yeah, in my head, they paused, and Tim and Clayface just looked at each other like, okay.
And Steph just snickered in the background.
Yes. Oh, amazing.
But she's right. She's right. If he learned how to fight like a normal human, and then he could, as you know, haha, funny. If he could harden parts of his body, every time he got hit, he'd be unstoppable.
He would be. It's a good point.
Yeah, but yes, it's hilarious.
That's the scene where she's telling everyone what they do wrong, and my favorite reaction is I think the most relatable reaction is Steph being like, she's right though.
Oh yeah.
Yep, I do that.
I do just love the whole, is it Belfry or Belfry? Which
The
way
Belfry.
do I say it?
It's the belfry, like bats in the belfry.
Okay. I love it. I wish it was used more often.
I know, at this point, we have read five books. Have we actually seen the Batcave in any of them yet, TJ? We haven't, right? They were, because we read the Grant Morrison one where they're in the, Dick Grayson's version of the Batcave, and then we've read the Belfry. We have not read any that are set in the Batcave
That's
yet.
true. You're not wrong.
We see a Batcave, but it is not the Batcave.
That's true. We see the American Batcave. Oof.
America, Batman.
There was a lot going on there.
Oh yeah, we're getting there.
we sure are.
So back to that rooftop scene between Bruce and Tim. There's a part where Tim says, basically, why did you include me in this? I'm usually never included.
Which is so accurate.
Yeah, I thought that was funny.
The way that is true. He's like, I didn't know you remembered you had another son.
Oh, I know you like your dead sons better than me.
It's so true.
Maybe I'll change that by the end of this comic book. We shall see.
Foreshadowing. This is definitely the scene where I wrote down, wow, daddy issues.
No, it's actually a fantastic scene because
yes.
because Tim feels sort of left out, but then he's being brought in just at the moment that he's considering leaving the vigilante life, at least temporarily.
The heartbreak of
Yeah.
this. I like this version. So at some point we have to read War Games because I reference it a lot as it's one of my favorite Tim Drake stories from earlier continuity. In that one, he decides to leave and go to school too. It's a similar story, but the writer of that one, who I don't remember who is at the moment off the top of my head, writes Batman as jealous and angry about it. And it's very sad. So it's very complicated too because he's not even an adult yet. So he's going to high school. He's like, I want to go to high school with children. And Batman's like, fine, I'll make your girlfriend into Robin. And that's when Steph becomes Robin.
Oh, that's when that happened. Oh no.
It's as a jealousy act to hurt him. But the joke's on Batman because Steph is very annoying to Bruce Wayne.
I'm not a huge fan of the Tim and Steph. Like, on page, if you were to give me all the qualities that they displayed in this book, I'd be like, wow, that's a really healthy relationship that I should support. But reading it in the page, like, on the page, they felt more like sibling-y to me, minus the making out.
Yeah.
Well, I hope minus the making out. Goodness.
Yeah, I don't know about your families.
It doesn't happen, no.
No, definitely not.
I've read Cassandra Clare.
Yes, you have. Yeah.
I didn't. I suppose because my experience with Tim, I've never read a lot of books where he's been paired off. So it didn't. I had no preconceived. Like, I know that there's one where he's with the Wonder Girl. I forget.
Yeah, I hate that. That is the worst Tim ship.
But I don't. Like,
her name is Cass, by the way.
It's also Cass. I thought so, but I stopped myself because I was like, wait, it can't be Cass too, can it? Yeah, I guess it can.
DC does not check to see if they've reused names ever.
Oh, so Roy Harper, here's Harper Row. That's not confusing.
They are not related.
No. You just want the Babs and Buster Bunny from Tiny Toons to go not related every time.
Let's not forget that Kate Kane and Cass Kane are also not related.
You can hear by the way I say it that it's spelled differently, right, Kate? I don't have to explain that to you on the page. That's fine. No, but I've never seen Tim with I've never read a lot of comics with Tim paired off, and so this version I didn't mind. Actually, I thought it was fine. I'm not dying for them, but I'm like, it's a cute couple. It's fine.
They're a common ship, so that she's pretty much his canon girlfriend most of the time. There's occasionally others. You are right, though. Frequently, he has no one. in the completely now just gone to DC editorial New 52 Tim, he has very many girlfriends, but
Oh.
that all got blown apart by Rebirth when they were like, we're pretending none of that ever happened. But he also was that is my least favorite version of Tim, is him in the Teen Titans, because they make him a jerk and it's not cool.
He is. I read that series, and I didn't hate the first couple volumes of the New
No.
52 Teen Titans, but he was kind of a jerk.
Yeah, which is not Tim at all.
No.
I didn't like it.
He came across as the Robin from Teen Titans Go.
Yeah. Yes.
But like less campy. But like still like that was his attitude.
You mean the one that killed Bruce Wayne's parents?
Yes.
Twitter loves to ship Tim and Connor Kent.
That is a good ship.
That makes sense.
It's a better.
I mean, their dads are making out on the side, so obviously.
Well, apparently they have a history on the Young Justice book, not the show.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
They have a very deep friendship. This is pre-52 stuff. But there is each Robin and each member of the Bat family has their own super family equivalent. It's very funny to me. So obviously Batman and Superman have each other, and then maybe Dick is the one that's an exception. I'm trying to think about it. But Jason had one of the older super sons that no longer exist, and Tim has John and Damian.
There is an official DC Universe article that they posted that was like, the romance that never was, Tim Con, and people like lost it.
It's really true because they very much act like a ship. It's I mean, the same way that Batman and Superman do, which even comes up in this one. I was dying.
And we keep bringing up Young Justice, the show. So now I know you've both seen it.
Yeah.
I feel like Dick as Robin / Nightwing in that show got so much of Tim's techiness from the comics.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so that's never a part of Dick in the comics.
And I remember I liked it. I liked it a lot as Robin, but making that Dick was like, well, I guess they were trying to like update it for the modern era, and like any Robin should be tech savvy to a certain degree. I think that's what they were kind of going for, but that it does take it away from Tim because
it does. Because Tim comes in later, but then doesn't have much to do because they've given all of his stuff away to Dick, basically. So
right. And like when I think of Robin, for me, I generally think of the Young Justice show Robin because I really like him. And when I think of Tim in that show, I really don't like him at all because he's kind of bland. But now I'm realizing I like the Tim Robin, he just the one from the comics.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now you get it.
Right, so he might be my favorite, and I just didn't know it the whole time.
This is making me so happy.
And
so we're going aboard the Tim train. Let's go.
Tim is the best. So should we talk about what he's like in this comic? Because I feel like I could talk about him forever.
I feel like you want to.
Well, it is his comic. It's a team comic. It's a Batman comic. It's kind of Tim and Kate's comic.
Yes, they have the arcs in this one.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So go in on Tim, please.
Do it.
Okay, so the Tim that is in this comic, which is the Tim of my heart, who is more it's true. He's more true to the one they originally introduced, even if who knows if that's his backstory anymore, who can say.
It's best when ignored.
Honestly, not sure DC editorial knows for sure anymore. Where did he come from? Who can say? But his personality in this is, I think we've mentioned some of it, he's very tech savvy, he's brilliant, and he knows it, but in a way that is not, I didn't find obnoxious. I think it could be, but even when he's like, I'm the smartest person in the city, it doesn't come off like Sherlock Holmes, right? Like
he was talking to himself, so it worked as like an affirmation for himself. Like, you're the smartest person in the city. You can do this.
Exactly. So he does it, he's not lording it over anyone, but he's like, he kind of knows, but also he's not an asshole about it. So he's incredibly smart, super awkward, but really cares. I mean, we're going to get into his final scene in this book and like the messages he sends, but and he's always, I say always like there isn't 500 different Tims, but the real Tim is always very conflicted about being a superhero because it takes such a toll on him. his character arc is very full of like mental health stuff. Like we get a little bit in this that, you know, he doesn't sleep. He has this chronic insomnia. If you go into his like solo series, you see that he is chronically depressed and anxious and cannot sleep like really badly. Like he has a lot of mental health problems because of being a vigilante, and he knows it. It's always a sacrifice for him, a sacrifice of himself.
But yeah, this presentation of Tim is definitive. I feel like for me going forward, in any version that I read that is not this version is going to come up against this version from Detective Comics that James Tynion wrote.
Yeah, it's worth going back to his solo series if you ever get the chance, the Red Robin solo, because this is that Tim as well, though he still has the backstory and it's informing him. But, you know, all of the I'm the middle child, I don't know where I fit in, I have to prove myself of him is in that. And it feels like that's what he's drawing from. And that's my favorite other than this. So... yeah.
How did you guys feel about evil Tim in this book? Ulysses Hadrian Armstrong.
I thought this was so funny. First of all, I was trying to figure out who this was. I was like, do I know this person? And
right, exactly.
No, right? Like, I don't know who this is.
I Googled it. It is an existing character that existed in some other comic, like in the 90s or something.
Okay, so he hasn't been around a minute, is what you're saying.
Yeah. He was a young kid called the General, but without the threes.
Okay.
In the name, whatever. I liked it as like his hacker name or whatever. You know, that's supposed to be. I enjoy anyone who has the balls to try to take a selfie with Batman.
That was great. I love that he's wearing a Batman shirt the entire time.
Yes.
I honestly, my notes literally say, I love that the villain is a Bat Bro.
Like, I like
They're all Bat Bros. Like, it's an army of Bat Bros.
They are. So we talk about this a lot. I feel like we can just, I guess, jump to this. It's sort of where we are, right? So the villains in this are an army of, like, an actual literal branch of the army that is fashioning themselves off Batman? Question mark?
Ish. Batman with guns?
Yeah, but see, this part spoke to me so much because this is the way that, you know, there's a version of a Batman fan that I have trouble connecting to.
Ooh, oh yeah, I didn't even think about this. Yes, go on.
Okay, right. We've talked about this in our show before a little bit. We've referenced the fact that these are the fans that will never listen to this podcast because we introduced it as queer and feminist.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no way. They're not here, so I'm not making anyone mad.
Or they're rage listening, in which case, too bad.
Yeah, if you guys are rage listening, thanks for driving up our streams. But this version of the fans that like they somehow have no reading comprehension of what the story of Batman is, and they just take it as like this hyper masculine, like violent, and as if that is the thing you're supposed to get from it. I blame Frank Miller for this mostly.
Yeah.
Because that version, my least favorite version of Batman ever written, is that person. And I guess there's some argument to make that he was trying to make a commentary. I think that's not true. I think he liked it.
Yeah. Well, there's a version of Batman in certain people's minds that is unstoppable. That is akin to a god. It's this Batman character. It's a masculine power trip that they view as, they're the ones who say unquestionably 10 out of 10 times in a fight Batman would always beat Superman. Those are those are those people. And
we know that he would beat him, but it would be with the power of love.
Yes. There is that, but also the thing I love in this book is it shows a scene where Batman loses.
Yes.
He is overpowered by 50 questionably bat-trained military guys with big ass versions of the Tumbler from the Batman the Dark Knight series, which I love that their Batmobiles are clearly from the Christian Bale movies.
Yes.
And there's 50 of them, and they beat him because they catch him unawares and they take him out. And I love that. I love a realistic Batman, but not a gritty realistic Batman, like a grim dark Batman. I like it's like, of course he got beaten by 50 guys who were well trained that caught him unawares. Of course he did, but the fact that he has this support system built in is why he's Batman.
Yes, and
he's gonna get out of it.
that is always Batman at his best, is when we see him working with others and needing others. And there's a lot of conversations in this book about why he's relying on Kate, because she has skills that he doesn't have. Like he recognizes it. And that's the Batman I like, not this hyper masculine version, which doesn't really exist on the page most of the time.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
I'm gonna out myself as a Dark Knight Returns fan by Frank Miller, but how Christopher just described that version of Batman, I think you nailed it.
Yeah, so that is an AU, and so I forgive it a little bit more.
I can enjoy it, but
the one that I'm referring to is not that one, and it's the other Frank Miller, the main run where he smacks Dick in the face when Dick is like 12.
I did
that
see
one
that somewhere.
I hate that. When he literally picks him up and says, "Stop acting like a girl," and slaps him across the face. That's the one I'm referring to.
Gosh, I can't wait to read that one.
Oh, we will. Yeah. Oh, we will.
I'm not going to be free for that recording, but I will listen to it.
It's just going to be 2 hours of me screaming into the mic with no interruption.
So staying with the villains, we have Kate's dad, who... So we find out that Kate knows who Batman is, and her dad also knows.
And Bruce Wayne also finds this out, which was a hilarious scene.
Yeah.
It is... I feel like his secret identity is almost the worst kept secret in all of comics.
Oh yeah, Jim Gordon knows. There's no way Jim Gordon doesn't know.
Yeah, Jim Gordon pretends he doesn't know because it's more helpful that way.
Can I just cut in really, really fast with a question?
Please.
Okay, so Kate is his cousin.
Yes.
And so Colonel Kane Jake Kane is her father, and therefore Bruce's mother's brother and Bruce's uncle. Why didn't he go to live with the Kanes when his parents died?
Okay, I wrote this down too.
Yeah.
I was like, especially that scene. So there's a scene where they flash back to the funeral and they're talking about how the Kanes family motto is they stick together. And I'm like, is it though?
You abandoned your nephew, you monster.
Yeah, Kate's like, "Hi, Bruce, I'm your cousin, but you can't come live with us."
Yeah. I wonder, like, was there a vicious custody battle with Alfred that we don't see?
There'd have to be, I mean...
Alfred's like, "This is my child, you cannot have him."
It's a comic, and obviously, like, you know, the richest family in the world, and they can do what they want. And like, if Bruce had been a cat, they would have just left the money to the cat, and he would have lived alone, like, the same way. So, but like, you got to think there'd be a custody battle of some kind. Like, no, he's not living by himself in the creepy giant mansion with just a butler. He's coming to live with his family, but they didn't. So what?
Yeah, I mean, and the way that the characters are set up in this story, that, you know, he's mad at Thomas Wayne for being hopeful, was basically what it was. Like, how dare you have hope? They could have just as easily just thrown in one line where he's like, "We're not taking in that son of Thomas Wayne." Like, it was
right.
There.
Make him worse.
Yeah.
Well, even in the flashback, it made it seem like his wife was like, "No, this is your nephew." Like, he kind of softened up to it, but then...
I thought so. And
then it's like, well, he still doesn't come to live with you, so obviously you didn't get that soft.
Or visit?
Yeah. It's sort of a conflicting message, too, because they kind of want us to see Colonel Kane as a sympathetic character, because it seems like he's a fanatic. He's not evil. Yeah. It feels like, and he's very firm in his belief that his way is the correct way, and he's not going to let you get in the way. But like, he doesn't really want to kill Batman. He doesn't really want to kill any of the team. He loves his daughter. I think we can say that. He loves although it's a toxic love.
Yeah, I was gonna say he loves the version of her that he wants her to be.
Right, but the book wants us to have sympathy, I think, for Colonel Kane. Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily match up with just let the kid live in the giant spooky mansion. It's fine.
He has known that Bruce is Batman for a while now, it's implied, and he hasn't told anyone in the military. So I mean, I guess he could have been worse.
Right.
Yeah. There's a lot of he could have been worse in this.
Which is why I think he's a fanatic. He thinks he's doing the right thing.
As far as I can tell, the right thing in his mind is America. Is that did I get it?
Yeah.
I love I don't know if you read the individual issues or if you read the bind up, but in the bind up they have a variant cover, which is the bat symbol, but an American flag that looks
Yeah.
like a bumper sticker.
Oh, where is that? Somewhere in here, but yes, I've seen that one. Yeah.
It's good.
It's just it's like a bat symbol. It looks like it's designed. It's a good draw. It's a good piece of art, but
Oh,
it's like
absolutely.
meant to look like an American flag that has been torn and shredded so that it now looks like a bat symbol.
Yeah, that cover almost reminds. I keep bringing up X-Men. The
Yes,
the
fair.
Days of
This
Future
has
Past
X-Men.
one.
Yeah.
exactly. You're 100%
This whole
right.
comic has an X-Men vibe to it. The team is X-Men like in a
Yeah,
way.
It
that's
is.
probably why I
You're right.
like it so much.
It probably is.
And then the villains, their motive is that they believe in the League of Shadows, which, to my understanding, is not the same as the League of Assassins.
Do you know, I'm a Batman fan, and I read this, and I've read it before, and I still was like, wait, the League, is it not the same? Is it? What is happening?
Yeah.
They should not be named so similarly.
Yeah, I thought they were the same thing, just different names, but apparently not.
No, I guess not, because they even have something to do with Ra's al Ghul, because they mention him as well.
Well, Batman says that like the idea is there is a League of Assassins that is run by Ra's al Ghul,
Yes.
but there is the myth of a League of Shadows that Ra's al Ghul, I guess, runs, but doesn't actually run because it doesn't really exist. It's just a myth that he uses to scare and intimidate people.
Why
on
would
top
he
of the
need
army
that?
of assassins, right?
That was the part I was like, I'm sorry. Why would that have to exist? I thought the League of Assassins was already that. Also, my notes here just literally say, why would Batman assume this isn't real? Every conspiracy
Oh God.
is real.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, I thought of you. This is way back at the beginning of the book.
Yes.
But he's talking with, who the heck is he talking? He's talking with Kate about Azrael. He's like,
Yes.
Azrael was convinced there was this giant conspiracy, and I didn't think anything of it. And I'm like, Court of Owls, you
I know.
dumbass.
I was like, you just like, this is post Court of Owls, so you know that there's a conspiracy in Gotham. Why would you not be like, of course there's two?
Yeah,
Gotham City is the only city where every conspiracy theory is true.
Yeah, by the end of this book, I was like, I'm fully expecting the actual League of Shadows to like be the final villain, but I don't know if that's true.
Yeah.
They hint at it. So towards the end of the book, when they're saving everybody who's being targeted, because like Bruce is like, they're all innocent. They show one shot of a guy who Orphan saves who has like black eyes.
Yes.
As he walks away.
Oh, I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, so they hint at it, and I'm like, I've only read a couple of the volumes after this, and I don't think I've gotten to the point where they actually deal with it. I don't remember if I have or not.
I haven't gone past this either for reasons we'll get to when we explain the end.
Sure.
But I will. I want to. I'm just emotionally compromised.
There is more fantastic Clayface.
Yes.
That I will not spoil for you after this.
I mean, I'll do it. I'm not saying I won't. I'm just saying when I originally read it, I was like, I'm gonna need a minute or years.
Mm-hmm. So the team saves Bruce from them, and it's like the same night, and my brain immediately went to a D&D campaign of like, they haven't even had a long rest yet. What do you mean there's another attack?
I thought this too when Kate is like, it's been a long night, but we're not done yet. And I was like, it's been a night? That's it?
I mean, it makes sense. Batman wasn't with them. Like, Batman was getting himself out anyway. With that fake tooth trick, which I loved. Like, of course, he's got a fake tooth with a gas bomb in it.
Of course he does. That was so funny. Also, can we briefly talk about them? They take the utility belt apart, and it's like, how does all this stuff fit in there? And they're losing their minds. They pull out a thing of kryptonite.
like, wait a second, that's not. Oh wow, that could go for a lot of money on the black market.
I was dying. They're like, we have to figure out how to make our equipment fit in such a tight space. That was so funny.
Yeah, they're like, this is number, whatever high number it was, and then they go, we're only 30% done.
Yeah, it's item 42, and then like we've cataloged 30% of the belt at item 42.
Funny. I love that. They've basically made his belt canon a TARDIS.
It's a bag of holding.
It is.
So Batman casually calls the president and is like,
Have Has he always been able to do this?
The fact that he goes, you know who this is.
I was like, does
You
he?
do?
Does he call often?
No, it seemed like he did it because he first goes, no, this is not the ambassador. You know who this is. And I was like, so you've had this line set up, the black line, apparently, to
It's
the
the bat
president.
phone from the 1966
Right.
TV
I guess
series.
he hasn't used it since the 60s is what
Yes.
we're getting.
The president just goes, stop calling me.
But, people often make jokes about how Bruce Wayne could solve a lot more problems in Gotham if he used his influence. And now that I know he has a line directly to the president, I'm like, everyone is correct.
But that's the question, though. When he says, you know who this is he being Bruce Wayne or is he being Batman at that point?
Oh, it would be really funny if it was Bruce Wayne. I guess
You know who this is? I paid for your campaign. I own your ass. Do what I want, Mr. President.
You remember
Right.
when you were losing in the polls and I said you'd owe me a favor?
Yeah. So my uncle is kind of being a dick.
My uncle has a secret, shady government agency that I need you to shut down.
And they do. They shut it down. He gets they're terrorists or something, right, by the end?
Yeah. They're declared terrorists. The other of the, a bazillion government organizations that exist within the DC universe, Argus shows up and is like, stand down with your Avengers clearly floating aircraft carrier.
I don't know what it says about how much I watch Arrowverse that I was like, dig! He's there!
Of course.
I do have to point out that in the climax, when Batman is trying to get to Tim during the drone attack, it said that Dick calls Midnighter, and I was like,
Mhm.
yes!
I thought of you, TJ.
Yep.
I was like, but then I got upset because we don't see Midnighter. You can't do that to me. This comic, my only complaint about it truly is that they tell me Harper Row and Midnighter are around and I don't even get to see them. And Duke Thomas, actually. We only get a pan to him at one point.
In my mind, I had a cut scene where it was Dick pulling out his phone like, oh gosh, gotta have an awkward call to my hookup Midnighter.
Yeah, he's like, you up? I need some superhero help.
Yep. And they're like, oh gosh, this is awkward. We just banged.
Didn't you just leave my apartment? What are you doing calling me?
Yeah, Christopher, I'm a shipper of them, if you couldn't
Oh,
tell.
yes. I heard.
Okay. You did hear. Episode 2. Thanks for listening.
I am disappointed that you'd want to break up Midnighter and Apollo, but I've come to terms with it, and I'm fine with it.
I just assume in my head, TJ's ship happens in one of the many times when Apollo is dead or has amnesia.
Fair enough.
And in my defense, I haven't actually read Midnighter and Apollo yet.
We're going to.
Yes.
That's coming up because it is Bat Family. I don't care how tangential it is.
It's meant to. They're Batman and Superman. They're meant
I
to be Batman and
know!
Superman. Of course, you have to read it. But that touches on a thing that I love about this comic, and I love about comics that do this.
Yes.
Is it acknowledges the wider world.
Yes.
Of superheroes existing. So many comics, Batman comics are bad at this too. It's like only the characters that we see on the page exist to solve problems. We can never talk to Superman, we can never get help from Dick, we can never get help from Midnighter. They don't exist because it only exists here on the page.
Right. And one of my favorite moments is when Alfred's like, if you'd been missing a few more minutes, I was going to call Superman. And now, my headcanon is that Alfred and Superman just chat on the phone. Like, this is a thing.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, I feel like this book has so many characters and even a big supporting cast just in cameos, but I feel like all of them had a moment to shine. It was just such a well-paced book, and even just in terms of the characters being balanced.
Yeah, I agree. And we do get, that we get flashes of some of the other characters at the very end, which means it is time to talk about the part that's going to be hard to talk about.
Yeah. The
This
sacrifice.
is so sad.
The sacrifice of Tim Drake.
The sequence of Batman just like going as fast as he can to try to save him.
This pan on his face, the one panel that's his face when he realizes what Tim has done, is so heartbreaking. I didn't think I would cry again, but I did.
I haven't read anything else with Tim in it, but this is my third time reading this, and every time it still hits pretty hard.
Right. So what happens in this is there are all these drones that Batbro kid launches, and they're supposed to go kill potential terrorist, but also literally anyone else, basically.
Yeah. They don't care about collateral damage at all.
Right. And there's 2 waves of it, but Tim only knows about 1 wave of it, apparently. And he programs them to come and kill him, and then their mission will be done once he's dead. But he thinks he could beat them because math. Which is so Tim, and
he
I loved
does.
it.
He does it.
And he does it, and he doesn't know there's a second wave.
They do such a great job of, I love that they cut away from him fighting. Like he's waiting for the drones to come, and then they cut away and they have the kid, Ulysses, and the colonel, and they're talking about it, and they're like, holy crap, he's actually winning. And I think that was the smartest way to do it.
Right, and you see him on the computer screen in the back. That's
you see little shots of it, but like they don't stay with him as he's fighting it. And I feel like it's better to let us, like, obviously you want to follow show, don't tell, but I feel like in this particular moment, it's almost like the same scene with Batman being beaten by the 50 guys, like trying to show him beat the 50 guys. You could believe it if you cut away and you came back and he's just standing out of breath and they're all down. But you don't believe it if you have to watch every single beat of it, because it just gets absurd at a certain point. And I think the same thing would have happened with Tim if they had shown every single drone and every single thing. I'm like, okay, you're dead. You're dead like 5 times now.
And that is an interesting point of the way that this comic is written and the way that this writer does violence, because every major fight scene, we get enough of it, but it's mostly cutaway, because Cass also has a scene where she takes out a ton of people and we don't see it. We just pan up to her standing there like, I got it.
Which is funny. That's played for the joke too, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting because there's a tendency for some writers. We just went through a run of Grant Morrison.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a tendency to be like, what if we just pan on all the injuries and just like be gruesome? But this author was like, that's not what we're here for. The story is more important to me. The emotional beats are more important to me. And that's why he remains my favorite Batman writer.
And this scene with Tim fighting on the TV screen in the background, that's a part where they utilize the different artists, because you have one artist drawing the characters physically there, and then on the screen with Tim, it's a different artist. And it's just so brilliant how they use those different styles.
I agree.
I do have one question about Tim's plan, though.
Yes.
And I don't want to question the smartest, guy in Gotham, Tim Drake.
Which he is.
He is. But my question is, so he comes to the idea that he can't turn them off. He can only change the targets. And once the targets are dead, the drones are off. So he solves it. So he gives them one target. Why couldn't he have just said, your target is now Superman?
I had this exact question, though mine was a little darker. I was like, why didn't he make the target the Batman they're fighting?
But because Tim's not that type of person, though.
He's not, but they potentially could have turned it off if they attacked them, right? Maybe? I don't know. Yeah,
but the Colonel was saying turn it off because he didn't want to see Tim die. And he's like, I can't.
I forgot that they made a completely unstoppable drone robot army. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Why didn't he send it after Superman? That would have been an amazing phone call.
Hey, Clark, just get away from the city and just stand there for 50 minutes.
Just heads up, I sent a whole bunch of killer drones to you as a fun joke.
Yeah, maybe his BFF Alfred called him up, but maybe Clark was like, no. And they were like, okay, he's busy.
Clark found out that Bruce has been carrying around kryptonite this whole time, and he's like, fuck you.
I do want to say I am a Ulysses apologist, because I like the character here, and I thought he was charming up to a point until they were like, no, he's evil. But in my heart, I want to see him get the redemption treatment.
I feel like we will never see him again, but I like that thought. I feel like he's just not in anything.
Probably. I would love to see him and Tim have an ongoing rivalry. That would be so fun.
That would be.
Well, the Wikipedia, I just looked him up fast on the Wikipedia article the other night, and it said that he is Tim Drake's nemesis. I'm like, is he though?
I don't think that's true, but I guess in this one he is.
And so I know we haven't read Under the Red Hood yet.
Yes.
But I have seen the movie. And so the sequence with Batman rushing to Tim to try to save him, I was having flashbacks to that. And I'm sure Bruce was having flashbacks to Jason dying and him
100%.
not making it in time. It was just so sad.
It was so sad.
The panel of him holding Tim's bow staff and it's covered in blood. It's a direct mimic, like he's on his knees, of him holding Jason's dead body.
Absolutely, yeah. That whole scene. So he does a call, so leaving a message for the family, and I love that because a lot of the writers try to play up the rivalry between the Robins, but this writer specifically gets that they are family.
Yes.
And he says goodbye to each of them, even Damian. And then his message to Steph was really heartbreaking, how happy she makes him. The reason I like them, so I didn't say this earlier, I want to come back to it. The reason I do like them is because she is sort of the opposite of him in a lot of ways while still matching him.
Yeah.
Because, well, he's dark and troubled and sad. She is all things light and happy, and she will find the joke in everything, including him, in a way that is playful and makes him feel included.
Yeah, I think they're fine. I just I don't ship it.
TJ's like, it's not gay.
It was too heterosexual for me.
You're not wrong. And she is bisexual, canon bisexual. So
yeah, they at least strongly hinted at it in the newer Bendis Young Justice comics. I did read a little of that.
Yeah.
I love the fact that I just love the fact that she's, light and happy, and he is dark and brooding, and he's basically the son of Batman, and she's the daughter of a supervillain.
Yes.
And it's, of course, they are the opposites of who, quote unquote, raised them.
Yeah, I don't know why, but my brain just immediately was like, he was a Robin, she was the daughter of a supervillain. Can it get any more obvious?
It has to happen.
This is a queer feminist podcast, so we obviously love Avril Lavigne.
We do. But I love also how supportive she is of him. There's a scene that's like one of the most functional, healthy scenes in a comic I've ever read, where she's like, if you decide to leave the vigilante game and go to college, I support you. But if this makes you happy, I support you. I just want you to be happy. And I was like, that's all I want too.
Okay, so Tim dies, Tim, quote,
Dies.
And then we get this silent scene between Bruce and Steph where she gives him the acceptance letter to that university.
Oh, God.
Because he said, it's not totally silent, because the line in that scene, he's like trying to comfort her, and he's like, Tim chose this. And she's like, hands it to him and is like, no.
No, he didn't.
He did not. He came back for you. Oh, it was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
This comic's all about choices, though. Like, that is the running theme. It's Kate's choices. It's the Colonel's choices. It's Bruce's choices of who to put on the team, and it's Tim's choices. And even though Steph has that comeback of giving him the letter saying basically he didn't choose this, in the end he did. He chose to make that choice.
Yes.
Maybe he should have chosen to send him after Superman, like we said, but he still made the choice, and he accepted it at the end.
But that's Tim. That's part of why he is my beloved super mentally unhealthy character. Is it wouldn't occur to him to send him to Superman. I know we're making jokes like that.
Yes, of course. I agree with you 100%.
He would jump on a bomb even if it wasn't loaded. Like, that's Tim. He's constantly like, how about, somebody has a cold, what if I die? And you're like, no, why would that, who would that help? But that's him. That's who he is.
Well, he's selfless, and that's why he is selfless to a degree that he needs to be convinced to do the thing that would be better for him, which is go to college and take advantage of that.
Right, and he feels guilt about it.
Right, but he's so smart. I think Steph points out that he's built this entire belfry,
which can heal itself.
Right, what else could he make to help the entire world if he got a proper education? And
Clayface actually has a moment where he's like, "Why are you a vigilante? You're too smart for this job." And Tim trips over himself for a second and is like, "What? No, what? What are you talking about?"
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, It's Clayface. We've got to give credit to the himbo.
Yeah, he made him realize what he wanted.
He did. And he decides he's going to go. That's part of it. There's definitely a moment where I was like, no, he was 2 months from retirement. 1
day from retirement. It would have been the next day you would have told Bruce, but nope.
Because because genuinely, he's like, I'll go next semester. I'll just skip one semester. Yeah, that line. It's like a brief line to Steph where he's like, don't worry, I'll help with this. There's always a this.
Go ahead.
His final message ends with
Yeah.
Robin out. Not Red Robin out.
Yes. He
Robin
accepts himself
out.
as Robin.
I was like, oh my God, that's so good. And so subtle that I think the first time I read it, I didn't catch it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And then we pan to mysterious otherworld. And this is also just a very sad scene. I mean, he's like, oh, I'm not going to be here long. My friends will come for me. They'll come. And that's the last line of this volume.
Yeah, I have no idea what that place was or who that was.
Yeah. Tim lives, but he's imprisoned somewhere, and everyone thinks he's dead.
Right. Would either one of you mind if we talk for a second about what's coming just a little bit? Because it is important, I feel.
Go for it.
So I won't spoil what happens in the volumes, but as far as the arc of the story, because it connects back to something we've talked about, TJ, on the show before. So when Bruce is, quote, dead in the past continuity of the comics, Tim spends his whole time, we talked about this in the episode with Ben Conn, right? That he spends this whole time looking for Bruce and he never gives up on him. And one of the arcs of this story is that everybody gives up on finding Tim and nobody is looking for him. And it is so heartbreaking.
Yeah, like, I guess that, like, he's, quote, dead, but there was no body, so, like...
Right. And it's not as if all the other kids haven't come back at this point. But I think specifically that he looked for Bruce for years. Like, that's his whole solo comic, is him looking for Bruce. But Bruce does not come looking for him, is a specifically Tim Drake storyline.
It's so sad.
He's always the forgotten Robin.
So does he definitely not get looked for, like, in a future volume of this?
He doesn't. It's an important part of it is that they just accept that he's gone. Because it's really heartbreaking since he is expecting them to save him, and they don't.
And then he has to save himself.
Which I feel like just plays into this whole replacement, complex he has.
Well, it always makes me think of, like, if anyone is going to be Batman one day, it will be Tim.
Yeah, this is a good question. So your ideal takeover is Tim.
Well, my ideal takeover is Terry. But if we don't have Batman Beyond, if we're sort of separating that in an alternate universe, then right. Yeah, Tim is the one who has to be Batman.
At least they didn't like leave you thinking he was dead after this issue. They had like that ending scene, but it was like, just kidding, he's alive. Like, I guess readers could have been waiting for months.
No, I was just going to say I agree 100%. I love that the reveal is here so that we know that his survival is part of a story as opposed to it's going to be a retcon when they bring in a new, writer. It's like, oh, Tim actually survived. Haha. It's like, no, James Tynion's doing a thing.
Yeah, so I was very in the fandom at this point. Like, this was early on and when I was on the Twitter Batman fandom, and I remember the writer having to tweet out that he promises Tim was his favorite Robin and he would not leave him dead forever because he kept getting so many messages about this.
So how many Batarangs would you guys rate this comic? 1 out of 5?
5. Which is nice to say, I will say, because so we're 5 issues in. This is the first one I've given a good rating to.
Oh, wow. I was thinking I was going to give it a 4 out of 5. Like, it's like maybe even 4.5. Like, there and like all of it, it's quibbles. I feel like it could just be better in a couple places. Like we've talked about and joked about like certain story beats that are but yeah, it's a solid 4.5 Batarangs, I think, for this issue. Yeah. For this comic.
Yeah, just by virtue of the way guests have, who's picked what, we have read 4 comics that I guess 3, because our first one we just watched the trailer, but we've read 3 comics that I did not like at all. Oh. And I was so excited to get to this one because I knew how much I loved it, and I loved it just as much the second time. Yeah,
this one was a breath of fresh air, and I couldn't decide if I wanted to do 4.5 or 5, but I am going to have to go with 5 batarangs, just like Chris.
Yes.
And maybe that's just because we're following this up from a couple that I wasn't a huge fan of. But yeah, this one I thought was fantastic.
It's a great book. It's a fantastic book.
It's so good. And this is, in my ongoing rating of the spectrum of toxic masculinity in Batman writers, this writer, James, is my polar end to the positive side. Obviously, Frank Miller is the other anchor, and everything is measured in between these two.
It's a number bar with one of them on either end.
Yes, exactly. They are the polar opposites. And as mentioned before, Grant Morrison is the direct middle.
Fair. I think that's fair.
So Christopher, where can our listeners find you on social media? And do you have any projects you're currently working on?
Sure. I can be found at Chris X Morse. Chris, the letter X Morse on the Twitters. I have an older podcast called Supervillain Corner. It's still out there. You can find it wherever you find podcasts, or you can go to super-corner.com, which I think I still own, and find it there. I also did another podcast, which is not superhero or supervillain related, called Ugly Cry. It's with me and my buddy Clay. We watch movies and we cry and we talk about it. Did a full season of that. We may be doing a second season soon. But other than that, I am trying to get through a pandemic and raising a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, and hopefully I can start writing again.
I almost forgot to ask you the question we've been asking our guests, which is, I'll rephrase it for you. Since
Yes.
You make podcasts, if someone came to you and said, hey, do you want to make a Batman Bat Family podcast? What would you want it to be about? Like an audio drama type thing. Do you have any areas of that world you would want to explore?
Well, so many podcasts are just, this is obviously the exception, but so many podcasts are just like cis white guys talking to each other. And so I feel like the Robins have a podcast. And so Tim is the host. Dick is like the main guy he goes off of. Damien is just the grouchy kid in the corner who occasionally throws out comments. Jason calls in from time to time, and you hear him like fighting on the other end of the line with somebody.
I love this. Every time Jason comes in, it becomes an explicit podcast.
Yes.
Okay, so you want to do a legit podcast, but fictionally ran by the characters?
Yes, like I joked with a friend of mine, like if so many of these like comic book characters were real, like the Ninja Turtles would definitely have a podcast, and I feel like the Robins would definitely have a podcast.
I would love that.
I would listen to it.
I would listen to it, but I also feel like it would be just a little pretentious.
Oh, very. They should not have one. They should not at all, but they would, and it would be awful, but in an endearing way.
Now, to be clear, would they be the Robins on the podcast, or is Bruce Wayne's like gaggle of children have a podcast?
It'd be like my brother, my brother, my brother, my brother, my brother, and me.
And Cass.
And the cow.
And the cow.
Yeah, Cass would just have like one word responses to everything.
She'd just be like, no.
It wouldn't be the Robins. They wouldn't tell anyone they were Robins. They're just Bruce Wayne's rich ass kids doing a podcast with weird stuff that if you're in the know, you clearly know that there's some Batman Robin stuff going on, but actual listeners would be like, what are they talking about?
It's definitely edited by Oracle.
Yes. Why is Jason bloody all the time?
Such a mystery. Those Wayne kids are so weird.
Yeah, in the background you just hear someone like blowing up the mansion, and they're like, that's nothing. Don't listen to that.
Oh, my mic fell over, that's all.
Oh, they're renovating the East Wing again.
They get call-in questions and people are just like, so is Steph your sister or your girlfriend? Just to be clear.
Yes.
I mean, she's Bat Family, but also dating Bat Family, and we don't think about it.
You gotta keep it in the family.
You do. You do.
Well, Christopher, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us.
Thank you for having me. This has been an absolute blast. I would recommend anyone to come on this podcast because it's so good. And you guys are so good, and thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. You have to come back and rant about Tim Drake's mistreatment with me again.
I will.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Gotham Outsiders. Next time we're reading
Batgirl Volume 1, Silent Night by Kelly Puckett.
with special guest Jeremy Whitley, writer of Unstoppable Wasp, Princeless, and many other amazing titles, including the upcoming DC horror line.
Yeah, we met Jeremy at ALA also last year, and it was so great to meet him. And I'm a huge Unstoppable Wasp fanboy, so I cannot wait to talk to him more and get his opinion on Cass Kane. And since we just got introduced to her in this volume we just talked about, I am so excited to learn more about her.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a lot of fun with Jeremy. I've worked with him on some of his comics, consulting on the psychology, and now I'm working on a new project with him. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Gotham Outsiders. You can find me, Chris, individually on Twitter at The Myth of Psyche, where I talk about queerness and feminism and pretty often Batman. You can also find me now on the new podcast Progressively Horrified with comics writers Jeremy Whitley and Ben Kahn. And TJ, where can they find you?
They can find me at TroyFin2 on Twitter, where I talk about all things book related and occasionally Batman related.
And you can find us both over on the Gotham Outsiders Twitter, at Gotham Outsiders on Twitter, where we talk about Batman all the time. Thanks for listening, and tune in next time. Same bat time, same bat place.